In August 2026, the United States was moments away from executing a massive military strike, signaling a sharp departure from decades of containment. To understand how the situation reached this threshold, we have to look back at the historical friction between Washington and Tehran. For decades, the two nations had been locked in a cycle of heavy sanctions and tactical sabotage over Iran's expanding nuclear capabilities. That standoff intensified early in the year as localized threats were directed at international shipping lanes. These actions placed global energy security at immediate risk, triggering a rapid and public military response. The geography of the region creates a strategic choke point. Because massive volumes of crude oil are forced through a narrow, vulnerable waterway, aggressive posturing often necessitates a massive defense, while simultaneously forcing a flurry of behind-the-scenes diplomacy. The conflict was dictated by this terrain. In August, a single localized miscalculation in these waters had the potential to sever the global energy supply chain. Throughout the summer of 2026, the United States rapidly concentrated its naval and air assets in the region, signaling a shift to active battle preparation. At the center of this buildup was the claim that U.S. forces had reached their highest level of combat readiness since the Second World War. This map details the buildup's primary focus, the Strait of Hormuz. The objective was securing this passage from an Iranian blockade. The strait is vulnerable to asymmetric tactics. Because 20% of global oil flows here, U.S. presence deterred initial attacks. Deploying this level of readiness into such a confined, volatile waterway creates an environment where accidental escalation becomes a high statistical probability. The narrative of a near conflict stems largely from public remarks made by the former president. He claimed that a massive military strike was fully prepared and then abruptly aborted at the last moment. The stated objective of this alleged operation was to neutralize Iranian nuclear threats before they reached a critical mass. Executing a strike on these types of facilities requires penetrating heavily defended airspace and deploying specialized bunker-busting munitions to reach targets buried deep underground. Satellite intelligence confirms the existence of these structural fortifications and the defense planning surrounding them. However, the specific claim of an immediate abort order on that day remains unconfirmed by official military logs. While the targets and the capabilities are real, the story of an operation being greenlit and pulled back relies on a post-facto political assertion rather than declassified records. According to the reports, the de-escalation was triggered by urgent diplomatic requests. Regional leaders reportedly intervened at the 11th hour, attempting to prevent the situation from spiraling into a broader regional war. Notably, Israel allegedly supported this last-minute de-escalation. Given their historical focus on eliminating Iranian nuclear targets, this shift in posture represented a significant diplomatic pivot. While reports of back-channel activity circulated in the West, official verification from Tehran remained unavailable. No acknowledgement of a near miss ever materialized from the Iranian government. This creates a case of information asymmetry. One side broadcasts its power and subsequent restraint, while the adversary refuses to acknowledge that a threat existed. Because of this dynamic, the narrative of the aborted strike functions as a one-sided record, shaped by those who chose to speak rather than a verified mutual consensus. Had the strike proceeded, the immediate impact would have been devastating. A direct assault on fortified nuclear sites would have guaranteed high casualties and triggered an immediate military retaliation. This visualization maps out the potential macroeconomic fallout. A kinetic conflict would have likely shut down the Strait of Hormuz, severed global energy supply lines, and sent markets into a severe downward spiral. In the weeks that followed, secondary claims suggested the crisis may have opened a window for potential quiet diplomatic breakthroughs regarding Iran's energy infrastructure. However, the limits of public knowledge are clear. Classified military planning and the specific details of backroom diplomacy rarely match the simplified claims made in public assertions. Ultimately, the tension of August 2026 passed without a visible military victory or a public treaty. The immediate result was a return to the economic status quo, leaving the underlying nuclear tension unresolved. The incident in August 2026 stands as a primary example of how modern geopolitical deterrence functions at the edge of conflict. This system relies on a paradox. It requires the visible, credible threat of overwhelming military force, paired with invisible backdoor diplomacy to prevent that force from being used. International security is a delicate architecture. The line separating a tense peace from a regional war is often decided by these unseen conversations. While the absolute truth of those final moments in 2026 remains obscured by political fog, the global system continues to rely on these unverified last-second pullbacks from the brink.